So, welcome to the 10th episode of The Property Show on UK Health Radio. I'm Matt Turner, and today the show is coming from Notting Hill. This is a beautiful part of West London, famous for many things. I suppose you've got the annual carnival, Notting Hill Carnival, Portobello Market, which if you've visited London as a tourist, no doubt you may have gone and bought some antiques. It's a beautiful market on a few times a week. Obviously a Hollywood blockbuster film with Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts, though I prefer to affiliate the area with some of London's finest properties, and some of these afford access to extensive, beautiful communal gardens. They really are something to see. Later in the show I speak with former clients and first-time buyers Anna and Stephen, who this year commissioned me to find them their dream home in the Notting Hill area. So that would be a good chance for you to hear what working with me is really like. I don't just speak on radio, so if you are looking for properties in London, have a listen to what they're going to say later and you can make your own mind up. First up though, I speak with local expert Keith Rigby. He is a director at Bective Leslie Marsh Estate Agents. From all my dealings in the area, and I've done a few transactions, Bective Leslie Marsh, they really are one of the friendliest and most professional agents in the area. Very pleased to say that I'm joined by Keith Rigby of Bective Leslie Marsh. How are you, Keith?
I'm very good, thank you very much.
Fantastic. And how long have you worked in the area? Yeah.
I've been here for 21 years now.
So we're in good company. So
one of the old timers of the area, I have to say.
Fantastic. So anything we need to know about Notting Hill, hopefully we're going to find out today. I suppose on that, the changes that you've seen in the past 20 years. Obviously, everyone's got an idea what the market is now, but has.
Yeah, I mean the place has changed dramatically. I mean it's constantly. People are spending money, and the shops are changing, and more services and things are kind of being added. So I guess you'd say that in the last 20 years, it has smartened up quite significantly. I think that probably 20 years ago, Notting Hill was on the map, and people kind of had definitely heard of it. But you would find people buying in Chelsea or in Kensington, whereas now it's a destination, and people just will come straight to Notting Hill because of what it offers. It
really is known, yeah. I think, around 2000 I worked in St John's Wood, and I'm quite sure that back then prices in St John's Wood they seem to be higher than around here, but I think that's actually changed somewhat. It really has.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite possible. I mean, it has shot up, from a variety of different kind of things, but it's a very pretty place, if you look at it, and it's really good access in and out, so you can kind of get into town really quickly, but also you can kind of deal with the M40 on your doorstep. You are straight out, really,
Yeah, I suppose it's west of England, I guess.
Yeah.
The people who've got their London pied-à-terres, off you go out at weekends, no, for sure. The only sort of distinctive parts of Notting Hill, obviously everyone's probably heard of the carnival around here, but
the carnival, I guess, kind of has a long history, but in a way the carnival has more of its roots towards North Kensington rather than in Ladbroke Grove, rather through Westbourne Grove where we are. But the carnival procession comes through here. It is, it's a mixed blessing. On the one hand, it kind of puts Notting Hill very firmly on the map, and it's a huge, huge draw. I don't know if you've ever been to Carnival.
I try to stay away from them, to be honest.
But that's actually the way kind of most locals kind of feel about it now.
Yeah.
But for those that kind of complain about the Carnival, it's a bit like buying a house next to a church and then complaining when the bells ring.
Yeah.
You bought here, the Carnival has been here for 40, 50 years, and is just a celebration of its kind of part of the history of the area. I mean, Notting Hill existed a long way before. If you look at the housing stock here, it was all built kind of around the expansion of, I think it was the Metropolitan line that kind of came through around the kind of mid 1850s, 1860s. So that's a long time before it got its kind of, Caribbean kind of heritage. Mm-hmm. But it has that as well. So the two things do have to kind of sit together.
Yeah, I'm just not one for big crowds, so call me boring. It's not a case of...
No, well, I tend to agree that 1 million people on one day in
is that
it's about 1 million people per day that kind of come to the carnival.
Okay.
I mean, over that weekend, we find that we have to board the office front up, so most of the shops do. And it's not that we're worried about kind of any criminal damage, it's just simply the sheer mass of people pressing against big plate glass windows.
Yeah.
It's just dangerous, so the police advise you board up your windows.
No, okay, so there's no property transactions going on that weekend then?
No, you cannot get in or out.
Don't book a viewing that weekend, yeah?
No, you will not get into it. I mean, I did have once, somebody was coming back and they emailed me to say they wanted to pick the keys up from the office on the Carnival Saturday, and I had to point out that everywhere was in lockdown and there was no way she would get anywhere near the office.
Yeah, no, that's it's going to be a challenge, to say the least. I mean, what kind of properties are in the area here then? You said obviously 1850s, and it's sort of old.
Yeah, it's like everything. I mean, one of the nice things about Notting Hill over other areas, I mean, St John's Wood I think is very, very similar architecturally in that it is quite well spaced out. It isn't really small, tight roads. You have some very grand roads with pretty big houses here. But equally, within all of that, you've got smaller, tighter kind of roads, and a lot of the buildings have been split up into flats.
Yeah.
So we've got the communal garden areas, which I guess are seen as the kind of pinnacle of property buying around the area, where, for example, there's one which is Ladbroke Square, is a 7-acre private garden, but that is shared amongst all the properties that back onto it or are within, I think it's 100 metres of it, maybe 50 metres or 100 metres, I can never remember, it has changed. And they get to use this kind of beautiful private garden.
I suppose that's one of the main characteristics of the area, isn't it? A big pool.
Yeah, it's definitely something kind of that it's well known for. I mean, obviously Richard Curtis is also kind of a local here, and he made Notting Hill the film in the area.
Okay, yeah.
And the closing scene is set in one of the communal gardens.
Yeah, I suppose if you haven't quite got green fingers but you want an open space, it's
fantastic. I mean, they're really kind of children friendly. I mean, if you go to any of the communal gardens, there will be a children's playground. Okay, it is for the privileged, and I accept that, but you go out there and children after school are all out mixing with each other playing a game of football.
Very secure as well, I guess.
And completely secure.
So, the entrance level to get a flat if you wanted to be in one of these gardens, what's the...
the thing is that there are mixtures of properties. I mean, there was bomb damage throughout the whole of London, and then Notting Hill was affected by it as well. So within the kind of mixture of 1840s and early 20th century properties, there were gaps, and in those gaps you'll see 1960s and 1950s blocks, which aren't as attractive and may have smaller units in.
Yeah.
So there's one on Ladbroke Grove, for example, which we sold earlier on this year, and it backs straight onto one of the communal gardens. And you could pick up a 1 or a 2 bedroom flat there, probably one bed starting from around about 600,000. Now I know that's still a lot of money coming from different areas, but when you consider that houses here can go for anything from 3 or 4 million up to 20 to 30 million, and those are on communal gardens, being able to buy a flat for 600,000 that's on the communal gardens seems a pretty good deal.
I suppose it's relative, really, isn't it?
It is relative to the area.
At the end of the day. I mean, so obviously you've got these lovely gardens. I mean, would that mean the service charges are quite steep?
No. I mean, it's one of the interesting kind of things. You do pay for the communal gardens, but it's a very small amount. I mean, the ownership of the gardens is interesting because they are owned by the directors of the communal gardens, and that changes. You can have a share, but they are for the benefit of the houses that back onto the gardens, so it can never be sold, it can never be developed. And they manage to keep their maintenance costs pretty low. I do think that there is a subsidy that kind of comes from the council as well for the communal gardens.
Now, so you basically have to own or rent a flat to be able to gain access. There's no.
You have to own or rent a flat. There are different rules for different gardens, but the bulk of them you have to physically back onto it. Your building has to back onto the gardens. There's one which is the large one, which I mentioned, Ladbroke Square, where there is a slightly different rule, and the boundary used to be 200 yards. So if you were within 200 yards of the communal gardens, you had access. It was overused, and so therefore they shrunk it down to, I think, 100. And you now have to be within that kind of curtilage to be able to get a key, which then gives you access.
Yeah. No, I know. I was actually out doing a search around here with your office, and there's a lovely Muse house that I was really trying to push to a client, and that with the benefit of access. I think it was to Ladbroke Gardens.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
it was. It had it was a very nice little Muse house. Very close to a popular pub, and you had to go around the corner, but it had access to Ladbroke Square. And in fact, quite nicely, we've sold it to a gentleman who's lived in the area for quite a long time. He's in his 70s. He was looking at a retirement home just around the corner, which also has access to the square.
Okay, yeah.
But, there's a much higher service charge and things like that. And actually, he's not so old that he kind of needs to kind of go into care at this stage. But, he's able to he's given up his big house and his garden, but he's still got access now to a garden that he can just go and sit in.
A very good buy, I think, because one of your competitors is marketing another house down there at, essentially probably around £1 million more than the one you had on. But that was in obviously a lot better condition, but I doubt they spent £1 million doing it up.
But it probably was.
You've looked after the old chap.
But our client's very happy as well. He's got a good price for it, and it's... Both parties are happy. Yeah,
I suppose. I mean, obviously, in that price bracket, you hear in London there's not so many transactions going on. So I guess it's more the willing vendor that's selling at the moment. The guy that's.
I mean, he's still getting a good price.
Yeah.
I mean, prices have come down, and the market is always, having been here for 20 years, I've been through various different kind of stages where the market has been buoyant or been really, really quiet. But there are always transactions to be had. You just have to work hard for your seller, because that's kind of who's employing us, and have a positive outlook. And if you can kind of instill confidence in the buyer, then they will buy. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is the problem of why buy today if tomorrow it's going to be cheaper. But actually, it's a home.
Yeah.
Not everybody. It is an emotional purchase. It's not about looking at it as an investment. It's looking at it somewhere where you will, live, spend time and enjoy.
Yeah, no, that definitely is going to be a place to enjoy. I really like that Muse house. I was already trying to push that to a few clients. I mean, on that then, I just came from a networking event, and this lady was grilling me about how the market's going to dive and I mean, how do you see the market at the moment?
Well, I mean, central London has certainly kind of come off its kind of peak values for the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, the biggest thing changed was we had, in all properties that are priced over £1 million, the increase in stamp duty has had an enormous effect. Then you had a secondary impact for investors or anybody buying a second home, and that can be, it's quite a loose thing, because we're also, London is a world centre. So if you own a property in Paris and you move to London, but you're not going to sell your flat in Paris because you're only going to be here for 5 or 6 years, but you'd rather buy something, you have to pay the extra stamp duty. This is seen as a second home. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't really matter where you're coming from, it catches all. And maybe that's no bad thing in terms of kind of raising revenue, but it has certainly kind of slowed down the market an awful lot. So that, Brexit, all the various different uncertainties have fed in. But I would, we've seen maybe 15% coming off the top price, maybe even 20% in some circumstances. The market has adjusted, and now I think we're kind of starting to come out of it a little bit. Transaction levels this autumn, there's a bit more life, there feels more activity, and it is just about kind of going, it is a home. We may not see the property price growth that we saw, in 2012 to 15 and things like that, or through the late 90s and early 2000s. But that's no bad thing. I think kind of price stability, and it is creeping back in though. Yeah,
I suppose, like you say, if it's going to be for a home, it's it should, if you're going to be there 10 years, I'm sure you're going to be okay. But I mean, the way I'm seeing the market, there's a lot of value actually out there. I think owners have gradually realised that if their neighbour sold at 2 million, they're suddenly not going to get 2.2. And maybe they're taking 1.8 now. So if you're suppose looking to buy in London at the minute, the way I'm seeing things is it's a good time to get in.
Yeah, I think that kind of central London. I mean, the difficulty is that we talk about numbers that are in the stratosphere for most people. They require a lottery win, and it does mean that it is an extreme kind of case. Nobody really feels kind of particularly sorry or sympathetic to kind of the changes that have kind of happened, because if you've got £2 million, then boo-hoo, whether it's kind of gone up or down. But actually, people, these are middle class kind of working people who are just finding somewhere to live that is close to their jobs, that is near where their children go to school, and that's just the price of land and the pressure to kind of live in these areas.
Market forces. On that, what is the type of demographic and who lives in Notting Hill? Is it more pied-à-terres, or
no,
people actually live in this area as well?
Notting Hill is a very, very lived-in area. It isn't a park for your cash type of area.
Yeah.
The attraction here are going to be, it has a beautiful kind of shopping kind of central kind of hub with very good cafes and restaurants. But it's also got great schools, be they, Holland Park, and Foxes, which is kind of, I think Foxes just up on the kind of hill here has the highest rating of a state primary school. And Holland Park is an academy. Mm-hmm. But then you've also got, vying with this, probably 10 or 15 private schools catering to that kind of sector of the market. So the infrastructure around the area is very good. The tube lines kind of going into town, are fantastic. And that means that it is a very, very lived-in area. But it's also very mixed in terms of both where people kind of come from. We have a huge international kind of clientele that live around here. So it is English, but it's also, Brazilian, it's French, it's German. It kind of caters to everybody. But it is also, Notting Hill is a very mixed area. You don't really have enormous kind of council estates that are no-go. The council estates or the council properties are mixed throughout the kind of whole area. I mean, yes, the area around Grenfell, which was kind of terribly affected earlier in the year, is predominantly kind of local authority, but actually not far from that, and I mean not far by 400-500 metres, are the communal gardens and very expensive kind of houses. So they all kind of pass through each other's areas the whole time, and have got on very well.
I suppose it does have a. I only hear, very not that often. It's kind of a very villagey feel. It's within London, like a Hampstead maybe, or
Well, it does, because I think that it offers a lot to people who live in the area, and so they kind of stay and they shop in the area. I mean, the one thing that we kind of haven't mentioned, which the area is also incredibly well known for, and is a huge magnet for people to kind of come at the weekends, but is actually a working market, is Portobello. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Portobello is, probably the heart, I think, of Notting Hill, and probably its most important kind of asset.
So I suppose if you said, how's the market, you got two answers to that one of them.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I have done a few searches around this area, and hear people speaking in London about off-market properties. Obviously, everyone looks on Zoopla or Prime Location or other web portals. I mean, what exactly is off-market? How do we?
Well, off-market simply it can mean many things to different people, but all it means is that it is not visibly being marketed on one of the portals. So it's not going to be on, for example, our website. It's not going to be on Prime Location. It's not going to be on Rightmove. It won't be on the market. So it just has no visible face. And there are many reasons for that. It could be that the seller is only just dipping their toe. They're not fully certain that they want to go on the market. It may be that they just don't really want their kind of neighbours to know what they're doing. Or in a lot of cases, and I think possibly this is the majority, it's been on the market and the owners have taken it off and are trying a different way of more exclusively marketing it. I think that on the whole, my kind of thoughts on these things is that it just depends on the circumstances of the seller. It may well be, I've got two houses that are off the market, Both actually for a very similar reason. They don't intrinsically want to move until next summer, but they know how difficult the market is.
Okay, yeah.
And so I thought, well, let's get started now, and then if nothing comes of it by February or March, in March we will start a public campaign for them and sell the property that way.
Yeah, no, I mean it definitely does give some exclusivity, I think, to it. When I'm doing a search and then you add that one on at the end that you didn't tell us about, it's always a good.
Well, throwing it back at you, it kind of, in a way, it justifies the reasons that search agents like yourself, are in central London, definitely needed to navigate the kind of property market. But it also kind of, I think, highlights the problems that the internet has brought for estate agents, is that you will always know of a property that you've had on the market that might have just come off, maybe taking a break or whatever. And if people only search online and don't, until they see what they want to buy, and don't contact local agents, then they will never hear about these things. Yeah. They will not know what is possible. They will only know what their eyes are kind of telling them. So, the internet has been brilliant in kind of, meaning that we can advertise our properties and they can be seen in Dubai or Hong Kong or Basildon. But actually the downside of it all is that people don't always call you and find out more about the property or more about the properties that aren't visibly being shown. Yeah, no, it's a very good point. I mean, what would you say the biggest challenge to the industry is right now? Has been Well, I think kind of the future is going to be dictated to by technology and how technology kind of enhances what we do, but also not places a barrier between us communicating. I mean, there is always, there is an easy way of selling, or in people's minds, which is all we do is we take photographs, put it online, create a brochure, and then wait. But actually, there's a lot more to it than that. And so, whilst Purple Bricks and eMove and other things will slowly eat away at sections of our market, I think that what it will hopefully do is wake up estate agents that they have to offer a service, that they have to deliver good advice to their clients, because it's trust and confidence in a market that is harder like this that will ensure that the property is on at the right price, and it will give the buyer the confidence to pay probably a little bit more than they thought that they wanted to, but that is also then the right price for the property. Yeah, no, that's definitely right. I mean, just off air while I was trying to figure out my technology, you being very, very honest about a customer. Well, it didn't actually be a customer, but someone you knew, and you were just giving them some very nice advice, because I think they went with another agent, but higher price, and then they actually sold it for the price you said. I think a lot lower. And it is difficult to choose the estate agent when you're kind of going out and you get 3 or 4 different opinions. But I would always kind of say, you should be choosing people on their personality and on somebody you want to work with, rather than simply on the fee that they're going to charge or the amount that they tell you that your property is worth. Because otherwise, you incentivize agents to tell you figures that aren't necessarily true. Yeah. And it will only, in this market, come back kind of and bite you, because property prices aren't rising in central London. Certainly they aren't around here. So therefore, you need to kind of get it right, and get it right first time. It's sometimes hard to hear the realistic news, isn't it? It's not always what people want to hear, and it is difficult if someone tells you that this was the conversation we had, that your property's worth 500,000 and someone else says 550. It is human nature to think, well, I might as well try it at 550. The danger is that by trying the 550, by the time you realise that person couldn't back it up with hard evidence, that actually your property is now worth 480. Yeah, no, for sure. Well, yeah, no, I mean, definitely if you're listening and you're looking to buy or sell in Notting Hill, I think
very honest, and the knowledge obviously you've got in 20 years is commendable. And I must say, I was out with one of your agents very recently, and she was fantastic. Really did the extra mile. And
Sophie works very, very hard on behalf of our kind of vendors. But she knows her stuff. But she also isn't going to tell you to buy something that isn't right for you. It doesn't work that way. No,
definitely a credit to the industry. I would say this firm. I dealt with one of your previous colleagues as well, and they were great as well. Just sorry I didn't buy the property for you guys in the end, but it's one day will come back, no doubt. Okay, so I mean, interest rates were at 0.25%. They've just jumped up to 0.5. Jump's probably a big word.
Well, they've doubled, haven't they?
They've I'm sure that'd be the headline on the newspaper. Interest rates double, which obviously that's the bank base rate that has doubled, not the your rate that you're borrowing one have doubled. I mean, you see any sort of forward-on effects with that?
Well, it's too early because it only happened several hours ago to kind of see what the knock-on effect's going to be. If anything, it just indicates that there is a change in direction. Interest rates are likely to go up, but we're not going to go back to kind of Norman Lamont time when rates are kind of going up to 15%. Mm-hmm. They are simply moving in a new direction. What it might do is put a little bit of pressure on those sellers that have kind of been sitting there kind of going, oh, I just don't know what to do, whether to sell, to rent it out or things like that. And so we may see a little bit of new stock creeping into the market. That would be good news. More stock to kind of show to buyers, because there's definitely an appetite out there to buy things, and it might say to people who are buying, well, I better fix my rate pretty quickly because there's still some good deals out there to be had. So I think that it can be, as an estate agent will always look for a positive spin on whatever piece of news you give him.
Well, it's always good to have those people in times of uncertainty, I would say. I mean, you obviously got a wealth of experience. What tips would you give people if they were, let's say, they're going out looking to buy? What should buyers be doing?
I think you buy with your heart, and you want to look at something that you actively want to look. You can always change the interior of a house. What you can't change is the area that it's in, or your neighbours, or things like that. So I think that for people who kind of go around and look at something and go, I don't like that wallpaper, and don't buy for that reason, you can change the wallpaper. But if the house next door to you kind of is covered in cladding, well, that's something harder. That's something that you cannot influence, and you will have to look at, and might irritate you at some point in the future. So make sure that the kind of neighbourhood is the right area for you. And also try to think a little bit ahead in terms of what your future needs are going to be rather than what today's needs. Because if you're buying your first property, or whenever you're moving because you need more space or you want more space, try, with stamp duty kind of at its current levels, to factor in that the next move is going to cost you. So if you can just push yourself that little bit further to get the space that you're going to be in for longer. So, not good for me, I'm afraid. I like everyone to move every 2 to 3 years. But if you can try to stretch it out to 5 to 7 years, you'll be saving yourself quite a bit of money. Yeah, no, that's definitely good advice. And I suppose, you're probably more advising people when they're coming to sell. I mean, what's kind of the advice you're giving to people when they're selling their houses? I think that kind of presentation is key. You only get one chance to make a good impression on a buyer. So making that little bit of extra effort to, flowers, dress it up, clean windows, keep it tidy, all of those things. And I know with kind of busy lives, it isn't easy, but you have to make it look as good as possible. Think of it as you're going on your first date, and you want to impress. Yeah. I won't ask for your tips on that part, but that's for another show maybe. I suppose that's very true. I mean, I always found it curious that, landlords, when they were they wanted to sell the property, I used to say to them, get the tenant out, clean it up, then sell it, and you'll probably get a better price. But people don't want a void period, and they whack it on with 2 months to go, and tenants tend not to let people round so easy, and it was detrimental to it. I mean, I think that it depends on kind of the value. I mean, the problem with if the loss of rent is going to be greater than the kind of gain in value you kind of have. But in a lot of cases, it isn't. Someone goes in and it is a mess, and you can't really see the flat. Eventually, you end up reducing it, and if you reduce most properties by, even if you take the average house price as being kind of around 300,000, you reduce it by 10%. That's £30,000.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's more than a year's vacancy in rent.
Yeah.
So it absolutely makes sense to tidy it up. If you've got good tenants in there and it looks nice, then why not offer them a reduction in the rent to make the access easy as possible, or even pay for a cleaner?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, people probably listen to this, and advice I always give people: once you hear it, it sounds quite obvious, but a lot of people just don't do these things, I guess. But one little thing. I mean, I was an estate agent for a long while, and I'm obviously still dealing with property solicitors. And there's kind of a love-hate between property solicitors and estate agents, and the conveyancing process I always find is the most challenging part. I mean, once I've found a property for someone, I say to them, a lot of people relax at that stage. I said, look, the challenging part could be now actually getting the deal from under offer to exchange. How do you sort of see the conveyancing, the legal process in the UK? And obviously it was in the news recently about trying to streamline it and get things done quicker.
Well, I think that one of the ideas that's come out is this idea of a bond, which isn't a bad idea, whereby, but it should be on, this is to stop gazumping, but it really should be a two-way situation. So gazumping happens in a rapidly rising kind of market. And it's not a good thing, but it is just it's just a free market kind of problem that we have. But the problem is also that if the conveyance is taking too long, because maybe the paperwork's complicated, sometimes it's down to the seller being too relaxed and not filling out their forms, their solicitor being not necessarily being overworked. I mean, I don't think there are bad solicitors out there in terms of conveyancing. It's not the hard, in most circumstances, it's not hugely complicated in terms of houses, but sometimes they do kind of take time. So the idea of a bond that's kind of held by the solicitors, so that if the buyer pulls out, they too face a punitive amount of money, so that they don't waste the vendor's time. But if the vendor pulls out, that they too kind of have to pay this kind of bond. I mean, it's a European kind of system, so it kind of works. But the problem is always that as soon as money becomes involved, you need the lawyers to agree the terms on which the money is held. So actually, the conveyancing process goes on hold whilst they agree the terms that this is done under. If there was a standardisation of everything, it would make it a lot easier.
It'd be a great idea, wouldn't it?
But we have so many leases stretching back. Mm-hmm. We came across this recently where we were selling a house which the vendor had told us was freehold, and then told that we found a buyer, and then told that it's common hold. And common hold is basically whereby there is a 2,000-year lease on the property. And it is held used to belong to the railways, and that their portfolio was bought by another company. And we had to go through a whole process of finding out who this was, and then because they'd done works at the property, so it wasn't the buyer's fault that the transaction took longer. It was just the way in which the information kind of came out, and that there were no standard situations.
I mean, it's always the challenge, isn't it, with a leasehold, freehold system that we have here. So it dates back quite a long while. I mean, just to round up, let's say if you had, I don't know, let's pick a figure, £1 million. I mean, would you be looking to invest around Notting Hill? Or is there any other areas in London that you'd think were up and coming? I mean, are you?
If I had £1 million, I probably would invest locally purely because it's much easier to kind of look after it. If you're a landlord and you live in London and own a property in Bristol, the boiler breaks down, anything, you have no control. It's too far away. Now, you may get a better yield on your money by buying in a university town or something like that, because that's generally where the high yields are going to be, renting out to students. But from the ease of being a landlord, a lot of people start, thinking that, I want to be a landlord, it's easy money. But my father always taught me there's no such thing as as free money. You have to work for it. And the same is true as a landlord. If you own a property, you have to maintain it. There are regulations. There, will always be problems at turnover when the kind of changeover kind of comes from one tenant to the next. You have to expect all these things. So I would just invest locally from the fact that I like the area, I like the people who kind of live around here,
and it is much easier to manage it.
I guess it's very, I suppose from an investment point of view, it's kind of blue chip, isn't it, now as well? It's, in a downturn, it's you're going to be probably a little bit more secure than, in those high yield areas. I was actually, when I was out on the search recently around here, and while I was waiting for the agent, an owner came out, it was on Holland Park Avenue, and he owned a second floor flat, and got talking to him, and he bought it in 1983, which is quite a significant year because my parents bought a house in Hertfordshire in 1983. I remember moving. And he paid £53,000. I think it was a 2-bedroom flat on Holland Park Avenue. And my parents paid £55,000 for a 4-bedroom house in Hertfordshire. Well, that is probably worth about £500,000 now. And his one is worth, I guess it's probably got a 1 in front of the 5.
Probably sounds about 1.25, something like that.
I don't know if he was shrewd back then, but he did well. The guy I was talking to, and when I told him that story, he was quite happy. No, that's fine. Thanks very much for your time today, Keith. How can any listeners get in contact with you? What's your website?
We've got our website, which is bectivellesliemarsh.co.uk, and all our details are kind of there for the 5 offices that we've got. So we cover Ladbroke Grove, which is W10, Brook Green, W14 and W6. We've got the office here in Notting Hill, which is W11 and W2. Then we have another branch in Kensington, and then another one down in Chelsea.
So you've really got this area of the market.
We basically cover the length really of Kensington and Chelsea. That's really where we are, and then we also dip over slightly into Brook Green, which is Hammersmith and Fulham.
No, for sure. And I guess you're one of the original agents around this
in Notting Hill. I mean, as a company, we've been in estate agents since 1880, so we would have been around, when the first developments were being kind of done here. Obviously, it's changed hands quite a few times since then. But here in Notting Hill, yes, we're kind of on Westbourne Grove. We were one of the original agents that was here, and we've been here for about 25 years now.
Fantastic. Well, if you are looking out in those areas that were just mentioned, you do very well to get in contact with Bective Leslie Marsh. I've always found them to be fantastic agents. So, well, thanks for your time today, Keith.
No, my pleasure.
And maybe we'll come back and chat about one of the other areas another time.
Great.
You're listening to The Property Show with Matt Turner of Astute Property Search. If you have any property-related questions that you would like to ask Matt, you can email him at matt, with 2 T's, at astutepropertysearch.co.uk.
Okay, great. So I'm with, very, very pleased to say I'm with Anna and Stephen today, some people who've first-time buyers who've just purchased a property in West London in Holland Park. How are you today, guys?
Hello. Very good.
Very good. Thanks for joining me. Quite often I interview, let's say, property professionals, estate agents, but you've actually gone through the process of buying. I suppose that's probably the question. What made you've been renting in London for some time, what made you pluck up the courage and join the property market?
Well, rental prices were getting a bit dismal for us. I was renting for, I think, 3 years. Was it 3 years? And it felt like a bit sort of depressing every month.
So just wasting money.
Yeah. And then I think we both sort of felt like we were at a point where we sort of felt like we could commit to a house. Yeah. And we're getting married. And it sort of felt like maybe it was the grown-up thing to do.
Grow up. Yeah. So you bought the property before the marriage then?
Yeah. Exactly. We're really banking on it working out.
I haven't got the answer which one's the best way to go first. But
the other thing was that, it's a bit kind of, you get sick of moving into different places and not being able to change things that you want to change and make things permanent. And
we had a horrible yellow hallway, which really depressed me, and not being able to do anything about it really was... just
having that, putting your personality onto a property.
You can't put roots down and start to make a place your home.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, why Notting Hill? Why Holland Park? Why this area?
We both have family here. You came here first.
Yeah, when I first moved in August in 2014 I moved to this area because my sister was here.
Okay.
And so it was the area that I sort of felt like I'd have people, and then it sort of started feeling like home very quickly, and I couldn't really imagine being anywhere else. And you came to live with me soon.
We both got to know the area quite well, and it's very. I mean, it's got so much going for it. So we just really liked it from the beginning.
Yeah.
And obviously, having family close by. My sister now lives in the area as well. She moved here about 6 months ago. So,
did you know London quite well? Other areas, or it was literally?
This was more or less the first area we got to know.
I think we sort of had sort of patchy ideas about the rest of London, but this is where we knew the most.
The other thing is we tried when we moved here from Oxford, we tried to cast the net slightly wider and look at renting properties, and we went to Parsons Green, we went down to
Fulham area,
Brook Green, and then other areas as well. But it was just much more time consuming because you don't know where the nice parts of each area are, and you don't know where you want to be. Whereas in Notting Hill, we always knew where we were.
Yeah, we had landmarks. We could always sort of gravitate back to places that sort of we sort of felt comfortable.
Parks close by, etc.
And it's just really well located. It's got really nice things around it. The parks are close. The transport's great. That sort of thing.
So, I mean, having gone through the buying experience, I mean, what are your thoughts on the UK? The property process in the UK.
We haven't bought property anywhere else, so it's our first experience of purchasing. And I guess I would say it was fairly sort of seamless. I think it was probably a lot to do with you, but
it worked well in the end.
Yeah, I think we were probably protected from a lot of the sort of.
It was confusing at points. I remember Matt had to explain what freehold and leasehold meant.
Yeah, certainly all of that those sort of those weird.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Okay, so you're kind of giving the game away a little bit there. So Anna and Stephen actually were clients of mine. So I've put in the contract that they had to come on radio and say nice things about me. I suppose obviously you've used a property finder, me. I suppose you haven't bought anything yourself to compare it with. But I mean, how did you find the process for using a property finder? I mean.
Well, I think it would have been much more difficult. It is our first time buying a house. We sort of felt like we were a bit at sea in the beginning.
We discussed whether we would go for it because remember in the beginning we said, well, can't we do this on our own?
Yeah.
And then we made a decision that it would be. I mean, it's such a huge investment overall that we kind of felt that it would be really sensible to kind of spend a little bit more, a fraction more, and get someone who knows what they're doing to help us.
Yeah, and just be guided in a process that was quite sort of intimidating.
Yeah, I think the intimidation factor is huge because when you go into a place, the agent is there and they are very much on the side of the seller, and it's quite difficult to feel like you've got someone on your side and you don't feel confident enough to be able to say, well, I don't think this place is worth what you say it is. Whereas if you have someone who's professional and knows that kind of stuff, then you can feel a bit more bolshy and able to say, based on our valuation, we think this is worth this. And then you've actually got something backing you up there rather than just... Otherwise, I think we probably would have just been bullied or...
Yeah, certainly would have been more bullied.
The other thing is it would have taken. I mean, it's a full time. It would have taken so long.
I mean, initially I had some time to do it, but then we both had full time jobs and we just couldn't.
Yeah.
I don't know how people do it.
So you were actually working, except when I was phoning you to come and do the one-off viewings, I kind of thought you were just no, I can't come. So you were actually busy at those points.
Busy. The other thing is that there's so much. The market is the impression I got was that the market was so varied, and there's no, obviously anyone just puts something on there for what they think it's worth, and we saw some places that were priced at a certain amount that were far worse than ones priced at a lesser amount, and vice versa. And so it's really good to have someone saying to you, I think this is worth this, and this is where it fits in. And you can kind of start to not take the agents so seriously and just kind of laugh them off a bit, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
And we certainly had, I mean, we had different ways of looking at property. Like, I had these aesthetic needs, and Matt, you were very good about saying, well, this is actually the price, it makes sense, this is worth the price, and which is not something I would have really sort of felt comfortable having any idea about, sort of whether something was worth it, or, you know, the resale value and all that sort of thing.
I think that's quite...
I looked at floors and spaces and
Yeah.
and didn't have an idea about whether it would be something that anyone else would want.
Yeah, because I guess the criteria at the beginning was that the idea is that you're going to be living in this house for 2-3 years and then maybe moving overseas, so it had to be an investment at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Which is quite, I suppose, quite a complicated place to be in.
But I think it's fairly common in London because people are often moving through, and if you don't necessarily buy in London forever, and it's quite good to, and particularly because London, the property market is so difficult to predict. It's quite nice to have someone to be able to say, well, I think this is probably going to hold its value over the next X.
Well,
we're not going to hold you to that.
I said that at the time, yeah.
We're not going to hold you to that. But that was a good thing. And the other thing was we saw a lot of properties that we wouldn't otherwise have seen because they were kind of got like sneak previews into properties. We just got snuck in, and there was just the agent saying you're not supposed to be here, but if you want to buy it, you can buy it. that kind of thing.
Well, the pre-market sort of properties. Yeah,
that was extremely useful actually, because often I think you can feel like you're at a bit of a clamour, and there's pressure to buy because the agents will tell you there are so many people interested and it's going to go quickly. But if you're there first, you can kind of see it without that pressure and make a proper decision on it.
Yeah, no. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm obviously agreeing with you and liking what you say. I mean, obviously you've got the keys now. We're actually in the apartment that you've purchased
as we speak.
As we speak, yeah, and you've made it very homely. I mean, when I last saw it, it was completely empty. I mean, is this living up to expectations? I mean, I suppose if you cast your mind back when we first met and you gave me your brief to say I was looking for X. I mean, it hasn't got the outside space, which I know we did look at some amazing communal gardens. Yeah. But I mean, how's this kind of fitted in with where you are now? Yeah.
It's always going to take us a while to sort of feel like it's home.
Yeah.
But I think it has started to feel like home quite quickly.
In the last week, I think.
Yeah, I mean, upstairs we've just kind of shielded you.
Yeah, you haven't seen upstairs yet.
Upstairs is a bit of a building site. Well, not a building site, but boxes and not sort of settled at all. But we're getting there, and it's been really lovely. It's really nice making plans about what we want to do with it to make it ours. Yeah, that's really exciting.
Because that was one of the reasons why we wanted to get a place, is to make it our own space, and we've already started that process. So it's really nice to kind of picture what parts will look like.
Have you been up on the roof yet?
I haven't braved the roof yet, but I've thought about it a few times. I don't know if that counts. I've looked in the place to get to the roof and kind of thought, well, I'm not wearing shoes, so maybe tomorrow, that kind of thing.
But I mean, that's so exciting. You're going to have the plans. Someone draw up plans for it.
Yeah, someone's doing plans for a roof
for the roof terrace. Yeah, fantastic.
And it's pretty confident we'll get the planning, and that would be amazing in summer to have.
It's difficult to imagine being able to use a roof terrace at the moment, but
well, I just to paint a little picture, I went up there with a structural engineer, and your neighbours actually have a fantastic roof terrace. So it was definitely. I guess that'd be the cherry on the cake.
That would be amazing.
Once done. So there's no plans, not back on the market, you're quite happy, you're not running away.
No, we're not.
No, okay. No, that's great. I mean, if there's anything else to add, anyone who's out there about to start looking to buy property, I mean, any sort of tips, what would you do differently again if you were going to, buy number 2, let's say?
I don't think we would do it differently at all.
I would say that using property finders very especially for us, it was just really important. We probably wouldn't have done it. Yeah, we would have got we would have sort of lost steam halfway through.
I think there was a
because-
time actually halfway through it was looking a bit edgy. I thought maybe we were going to be buying something.
Yeah.
Well, I think we were particularly difficult clients because we were constantly saying we like it, we don't like it, and then we had to. I mean, we looked at.
You're not different than anyone else. I mean, obviously, it's an emotional decision for you.
Yeah.
You're spending a lot of money.
It's
But I
a
mean, we looked at. I
complicated
don't know how many
decision. It's-
properties we looked at.
It's,
was
but
probably-
it's emotional and it's sort of and it's tactical and it's sort of it's a lot and it's really, I think you can get overwhelmed by those decisions and especially first time buyers, and I think having someone say this isn't mad, this does make sense and on your side, and sort of negotiating with estate agents, which I found quite sort of. I mean, I would have found quite exhausting. I think that sort of changed the whole experience for us.
Yeah.
It made it a much sort of more streamlined and.
I would tell
process.
I would genuinely tell anyone to do it because if you look at the cost of it, it really is a fraction of what you're going to be paying for the property, and it's money really well spent because you just it gives you a lot of comfort and makes the process a lot easier, and most importantly, it just makes you feel confident about what you're doing because, like you were saying, you can second guess yourself constantly, and it's such a huge transaction that it's terrifying in a way.
I suppose with that, I mean, if I push a little bit further from the asking price, I don't have to say any figures. I mean, quite happy what we got this for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was-
and also in terms of that, like we
we
offered under, and we probably wouldn't have had the guts to do
We
that.
would
with
never
that.
have.
Or we would have
would
been pushed into.
We would have said, "Oh, we'll offer this," and they would have said no, and then we would have just upped our offer. Whereas we actually ended up getting the property for quite a lot less than what they were asking, which is, and that's nice because we've been able to then put some of that extra money into making changes. First of all, to the kitchen.
Brilliant. Yeah, no,
First on the list.
Looking forward to coming back once it's all
We'll have to
all done.
cook-
But don't worry, I won't force you back on the
We'll
next
have to
show.
cook you some dinner.
No, brilliant. All right, well, thanks, Anna and Stephen. That's great. I really hope you have
Thank you, Matt.
a lovely time in this beautiful house. And yeah,
Thank you.
definitely come back for that barbecue when you got the roof terrace done.
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks very much.
So I hope you've enjoyed today's Notting Hill edition of the Property Show on UK Health Radio. I got to say thanks very much to Anna and Stephen. If anyone is actually a client of mine, I don't put a gun to your head and force you to come on the radio as well. So thanks for giving up your time, and also to Keith. We really had a great chat and probably could have filled the whole hour with your experience. Next week, we're digging basements. I am joined by Simon Martin. He's the director of the Crownstone Group, who, if you're looking to, if you've got a ground floor flat or you're looking to extend downwards, he's the man to take it on board. He talks us through the whole process, the legal side, all the preparation, pitfalls that may arise. So until next week, that's Matt Turner on The Property Show on UK Health Radio.